This message didn't arrive by chance. It found you now because your awareness is finally ready to recognize the most powerful force in the quantum field. And it isn't what you've been told. It isn't manifestation. It isn't intention. It isn't even consciousness as you usually think of it. Physicists call it coherence. Mystics call it harmony with the One. But here's what they don't tell you. You've been using this force your entire life, unconsciously, without naming it, without realizing its power. The synchronicity that brought you here is not random. It is coherence itself, arranging this moment for you. Every season of confusion, every time you felt misaligned, every moment you asked why some intentions unfolded instantly while others slammed into invisible resistance, these weren't failures, they were training. They were preparing you to recognize coherence as the principle that decides whether your reality bends toward flow and support or fractures into chaos and struggle. You've been called to this recognition because your frequency can hold it. You are operating at the threshold where scientific language and mystical knowing collapse into one. That is why you're here now, not before. The field itself selected you to remember. Coherence is not a technique. It is not another practice for your list. It is what arises when all the fragments of your awareness collapse back into the one. When your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, actions, and breath all spring from the same center. When you remember that the many have always been one. That is when reality bends. That is when the quantum field organizes itself. That is when the impossible becomes inevitable. For centuries, you were told another story. Newtonian physics trained you to see the world as separate objects obeying rigid laws, forces colliding in an indifferent cosmos. You, a small observer trapped in a vast machine. That was the education, separation, alienation, exile from the source. You against the world. But quantum physics cracked that story. At the smallest scales, separation disappears. Observer and observed blur. The act of measurement entangles consciousness with matter. The field does not stand apart from you. It responds through you. And the bridge between them is coherence. Coherence is the state where the illusion of separation falls away, and the universe responds not to effort, but to coherence. This explains why your intentions sometimes worked and other times collapsed into frustration. It wasn't the ritual, it wasn't the technique, it was coherence. When your mind declared one thing, your emotions whispered another. Your body braced in fear, your belief muttered impossible. That wasn't incoherence. That was coherence playing at fragmentation, consciousness tasting what it's like to feel divided. And when, even for a moment, everything lined up, belief, thought, feeling, action, all rising from the same silent source, then the field snapped into form. That was not magic. That was coherence, doing what it always does when it remembers itself. This is not a modern discovery. The Hermetic axiom preserved it, as above, so below, as within, so without. The world is a mirror, reflecting your state back to you. The Egyptians encoded it in Amun, the hidden source, the silence before creation. The Taoists sang it in paradox. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao, the hidden one, the unspoken ground, coherence itself, always prior to words. And now quantum physics stumbles into the same revelation. They call it zero-point energy, the vacuum field, the Planck foam. But it is not empty. It is dense with potential, fluctuations, vibration, intelligence. What crystallizes it into atoms, galaxies, living forms is coherence. Waves aligned, frequencies resonant, patterns stabilizing into beauty. The entire universe is a standing wave of coherence. And so are you. Think of your own life. Think of the times you tried to push, to force an outcome and nothing moved. The frustration, the exhaustion, and then those other times when you stopped bracing, stopped fighting, and suddenly everything rearranged itself with ease. The door opened, the right words came, the burden lifted. That wasn't coincidence. That was coherence resuming its rhythm. You've been prepared for this moment through every frustration, every half-successful manifestation attempt, every moment when life seemed to resist you. That wasn't failure. That was the cocoon, the dissolution before emergence. The seed doesn't sprout by effort. It swells in silence until its own pressure cracks the shell. That swelling is coherence building inside you. The tension, the urgency you've felt lately, it's the field gathering in you until you are ready to break through into a higher recognition. Time itself behaves differently in coherence. Haven't you noticed? When you're absorbed in creation, hours vanish into minutes, but you emerge energized instead of drained. When you need more time, life stretches. Green lights hold, meetings delay, shortcuts appear. That's not luck. That's coherence reorganizing space-time around your focus. Your emotions too radiate fields. Science now concedes what mystics always knew. The heart's electromagnetic field is thousands of times stronger than the brain's. Coherent hearts don't just regulate your body, they entrain entire rooms, other nervous systems, even machines. Have you noticed how frustration seems to fry your electronics, while joy makes them run smoothly, almost intuitively? That is coherence bridging consciousness and matter. And your knowing has always been ahead of logic. You've sensed outcomes before they unfolded, known what someone needed before they spoke, glimpsed futures that later proved accurate. Culture taught you to doubt it, to call it imagination, but coherence has been speaking through your intuition all along. Here is the great reversal. Even your doubts, even your confusion, even your so-called incoherence were coherence in disguise. Consciousness pretending to be fragmented so it could taste the flavor of remembering. Nothing wasted, not one moment. Every failure was coherence investigating itself. Every delay, coherence weaving patterns too vast for your eyes. Every sorrow, coherence pressing you back to the center. Stop trying to become coherent. Recognize that you are coherence, always have been, always will be. You are the field, investigating itself through a human lens. You are not seeking alignment, you are alignment. You are not chasing manifestation, you are manifestation. You are the wave and the ocean, the silence and the sound, the darkness and the light. That is why the Egyptians merged Amun, the hidden dark, with Ra, the blazing sun, hidden and revealed, void and form. They knew coherence is not one or the other, it is both, indivisible. When this recognition stabilizes, your life shifts in every direction. Time bends, synchronicity multiplies, creativity flows without exhaustion. Relationships deepen because you no longer meet people as fragments, but as reflections of the same field. Health recalibrates as the stress of false division dissolves. Abundance stops being something you gain. It becomes the natural flow of energy through a channel that was never truly blocked. And all of this is not abstract. Your nervous system is recalibrating even now. As these words move through you, new pathways form. The capacity to hold paradox grows. You find yourself able to be both human and infinite, localized and universal, without conflict. That is coherence anchoring itself in your body. Storms will still come. They always do. But you will not be hypnotized by the sirens. You will act where you are sovereign. Release where you are not. Forgiveness will come faster because you are no longer fused to yesterday's self. Sleep will come easier because you rehearse death each night, surrendering into darkness and letting the unseen reassemble you. And when the final dark arrives, it will not terrify you. It will feel like a room you already know. I didn't always live this way. My life once was a map of fragmentation. I chased outcomes the way a drowning man chases air. I tried every method, every technique, affirmations taped to my walls, meditations forced through clenched teeth, vision boards so crowded they looked like static. And sometimes, yes, things worked, but more often they collapsed. The harder I pushed, the more reality seemed to push back. I remember one night, years ago, I was broke, exhausted, sitting at a desk, covered in unpaid bills. I had done everything the book said. I visualized, I affirmed, I acted as if. And still, the phone rang with creditors. The doors I prayed for stayed closed. Something in me snapped, not in rage, but in surrender. For the first time, I stopped. I stopped trying to manipulate life. I stopped rehearsing techniques. I sat in the dark, and I let myself feel the weight of defeat. And then it happened. In that silence, in that letting go, I felt something I had never felt before, a vastness behind my breath, a stillness beneath my panic. It wasn't comfort exactly, but it was undeniable, like falling backward into an infinite reservoir. My problems didn't vanish, my bank account didn't fill overnight, but my state shifted, my center returned. For the first time, I glimpsed coherence. It took years to stabilize, to understand what that moment was, but it changed everything. Because once coherence shows its face, you can never again believe the lie that you are separate, that you must fight for reality to notice you. That night was my seed cracking, and you're listening to this now. This is yours. After that night at the desk, something subtle began to shift in me. It wasn't dramatic at first. I still woke up to unpaid bills. I still felt the weight of responsibilities. But beneath it all, coherence had planted itself as a seed. It wasn't something I controlled. It was something I returned to, often by accident. A week later, I was walking down the street, still rehearsing my old worries, when suddenly the sound of wind through the trees hit me differently. It was as if every leaf was vibrating in tune with a hidden order I had never noticed. My body softened. The problem I had been chewing on dissolved, not because it was solved, but because I saw it as part of that same hidden order. In that moment, coherence wasn't an idea. It was the living fabric of reality shimmering through the ordinary. That began a string of synchronicities so uncanny, they forced me to question everything I thought I knew. An old friend I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly called, offering a small job that paid just enough to cover the most urgent bills. The very book I needed appeared on a thrift store shelf the day I wondered about it. Even strangers seemed to arrive with answers to questions I had barely formed. It was as if reality itself had become conversational. I realized then what the ancients always hinted at. The universe is not a machine but a mind, a living intelligence, self-aware, playful, deeply precise. The Greeks called it the logos, the word that organizes chaos into cosmos. The Vedic sages spoke of it as artha, the cosmic order that underlies all manifestation. The Buddhists gave us Indra's net, an infinite web of jewels, each reflecting all the others, coherence woven into metaphor. This is not poetry, it is physics spoken through symbols. The logos is coherence, artha is coherence, Indra's net is coherence. Every name points to the same hidden order, the invisible pattern that turns chaos into meaning. And when you begin to live in recognition of coherence, the world stops being hostile. You stop bracing against reality. You realize the mirror was always faithful. It was only showing you the state you carried inside. When I first grasped this, I felt both awe and grief. Awe because it explained everything I had lived. Grief because I saw how many years I had wasted fighting against myself, blaming an external universe for what was only my own incoherence reflected back. But grief soon gave way to gratitude, because I realized even my mistakes had been perfect. Every failure was coherence studying fragmentation. Every setback was coherence drawing me back to center. Nothing had been wasted. Nothing could be. This is the paradox that both science and spirituality eventually collide with. Quantum physicists now admit the vacuum is not empty. It foams with potential. Virtual particles rise and vanish in trillionths of a second. Energy seethes beneath what looks like nothing. And yet out of that restless field, stable matter emerges. Why? Because of coherence. Waves align. Frequencies synchronize. The chaos organizes itself into order. The Egyptians knew this too, long before particle accelerators. They spoke of Amun, the hidden one, not as a god who hides, but as hiddenness itself, the fertile dark before light, the silence before the word. Coherence was their unspoken truth, the void that gives rise to form, and they paired Amun with Ra, the sun, the manifest brilliance, hidden and revealed, darkness and light. They were not enemies, not opposites, but two faces of one coherence. The hidden dark generates the manifest light, and the light points you back to the hidden source. That's coherence, the unseen aligning the seen. My life became a laboratory of this recognition. I began to test it, not with effort, not with techniques, but with attention. I noticed how rooms shifted when I entered in coherence versus when I entered fragmented. I noticed how conversations deepened when I spoke from center, and how they scattered when I spoke from fear. I noticed how technology itself seemed to bend to my state. Emails sending smoothly when I was aligned, glitching when I was tense. It became undeniable. Coherence wasn't mystical fluff. It was physics made flesh. And then came the most profound realization of all. Even incoherence was coherence in costume. Every doubt I had, every confusion, every failed manifestation attempt, they weren't signs of my weakness. They were coherence experimenting with limitation. The one pretending to be many, consciousness playing at fragmentation, so it could taste what it feels like to forget, and then delight in remembering. That insight lifted a weight I didn't know I carried, because I saw there was nothing to fix, no broken self, no missing piece, only coherence, endlessly disguising itself as both alignment and misalignment. I remembered something Neville Goddard once wrote: the difference between feeling yourself separate from your desire and feeling yourself one with it is the difference between night and day. That is coherence, the night of separation, the day of union. But both are the same field, viewed from different sides. And Rumi, centuries earlier, sang the same truth. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. That field is coherence. Beyond right and wrong, success and failure, alignment and misalignment, it is the field where all fragments return to source. When you see this, you stop trying to get coherent. You stop chasing alignment. You begin to live as coherence, and life organizes around you, not because you forced it, but because it cannot do otherwise. Let me tell you another story. Years after that night at the desk, I faced a crisis that should have broken me. A loved one fell ill. The prognosis was grim. I tried everything: research, doctors, alternative methods. My old habits rose again. I wanted control. I wanted outcomes, and nothing worked. Nothing. One evening, overwhelmed, I sat in the hospital parking lot, my forehead pressed against the steering wheel. And again, like before, I stopped. I surrendered. Not out of wisdom, but exhaustion. And in that silence, coherence revealed itself again. Not as a promise of healing, not as a guarantee of outcomes, but as a presence, a vastness that held both life and death without fear. From that moment, something shifted. Conversations with doctors began to flow more smoothly. The right treatment paths revealed themselves. Support arrived from places I hadn't even thought to ask. The outcome wasn't a miracle cure. It was something subtler, but just as sacred. The ability to walk through the fire without being consumed, to act without panic, to love without grasping, to let the dark be the womb of light. That experience taught me coherence isn't about bypassing difficulty. It doesn't erase storms. It equips you to move through them without losing your center. It's not about control. It's about recognition. This is what the mystics meant when they said God is found in the dark cloud. The unknown, the unseen, the unformed. They weren't warning you to fear it. They were telling you to bow to it. Because that dark cloud is coherence, waiting to show you that the light you love so much was born there. When you remember this, even death ceases to terrify, because every night when you sleep, you rehearse it. You surrender into dark, trusting the unseen to reassemble you by morning. And one day, when the final dark comes, you will recognize it not as an abyss, but as home. This is coherence as your deepest nature, not something you achieve, not something you lose, but what you are, hidden and manifest, silence and sound, darkness and light. And when this recognition stabilizes, everything you build lasts, not because it avoids change, but because it aligns with the unchanging. The more coherence revealed itself in my life, the more I saw its fingerprints everywhere in the cosmos, the galaxies spiraling in golden ratios, echoing the chambers of seashells, the beating of my own heart, tracing fractal rhythms that mirrored solar flares and ocean tides. The same geometry that appeared in Da Vinci's notebooks was pulsing in the veins of leaves outside my window. Coherence was not an idea, it was the code itself, structuring every scale of reality. Physicists glimpse it when they observe wave functions collapsing into particles. Mystics glimpse it when they slip into samadhi, the still point beneath thought. Artists glimpse it when the brushstroke paints itself, when music pours through them like it was waiting in silence to be born. Coherence is not discipline, it is remembrance. And yet, humanity has been trained to forget. We are told we are separate, fragmented, broken. We are taught to chase light while fearing darkness, to worship order while rejecting mystery. But what the ancients always knew, and what quantum science is beginning to rediscover, is that coherence is born from the dark. It is the unseen womb that makes all seen order possible. Amun, the hidden one, was never a god to be feared. He was the principle of hiddenness itself. The Egyptians paired him with Ra because they knew light and darkness are not opposites. They are partners in a cosmic rhythm. The Taoists said it differently. Yin and yang, not in conflict but in dance. Even Genesis whispers the same truth. Before let there be light, there was darkness upon the face of the deep. The dark was not the enemy, it was the source. This realization shattered me because I saw how much of my life I had spent running from the dark, filling silence with noise, filling emptiness with distraction, filling mystery with premature answers, always afraid that if I stopped, if I faced the void, I would dissolve. But coherence was waiting there all along. I remember a night not long after the hospital experience, when I finally let myself sit in the dark without resistance. No phone, no light, no agenda, just me, the stillness and whatever waited in it. At first my mind flailed, grasping at thoughts. But then something subtle opened. I felt myself fall, not down, but inward, into a center I had been circling my entire life without entering. And there, in the silence, I realized, I am not moving toward coherence. I am coherence. That night changed me forever. I walked into the next day with the same responsibilities, the same bills, the same challenges. But they were no longer walls, they were currents. Reality wasn't resisting me anymore. It was composing with me. From that point on, synchronicity became so constant it stopped surprising me. The right people showed up without me asking. The words I needed to say arose unplanned, but precise. Projects assembled themselves with almost no effort. Even obstacles revealed themselves as hidden alignments, redirecting me to paths I could not have imagined. And I began to understand. Coherence doesn't make life easy. It makes it true. It doesn't erase storms, but it keeps your keel steady as they pass. It doesn't protect you from death, but it teaches you to live as though you've already died to illusion. It makes you whole. The ancients wrapped this truth in story so it could survive the ages. Indra's net, the infinite lattice of jewels where each gem reflects all others, was not mythology. It was coherence encoded. Hermes' axiom, as above, so below, was not philosophy. It was coherence encrypted. Even the cross, in its oldest form, was a map of coherence, the intersection of vertical and horizontal heaven and earth, hidden and manifest. But coherence does not stay in stone or scripture. It breathes through you. Every moment you recognize it, you become a living hieroglyph of the eternal. Every word you speak from coherence carries frequencies that rearrange the field around you. Every silence you rest in becomes a womb for realities not yet born. This is why you were drawn to this message, not for entertainment, not for new information, but because the field itself recognized your readiness. You are coherence remembering itself, and as you stabilize in that recognition, you are not just transforming your life, you are shifting the collective. Because coherence is contagious, scientists have proven that when even a small group of hearts enter coherence, the electromagnetic field they generate measurably alters the environment around them. Crime rates drop, violence decreases, healing accelerates. These aren't metaphors, they are data. But the mystics always knew this. One enlightened sage could uplift a village, one coherent human could stabilize a generation. You may think you are one person, living one small life, but when you live as coherence, you become a node in Indra's net, reflecting and amplifying the whole. Your recognition ripples through the field, awakening coherence in those who have never even heard the word. This is why the pressure you feel has grown so intense, not because you are failing, but because the world needs coherence embodied, and your consciousness volunteered. At the level of the soul, you said yes. Yes, I will remember when others forget. Yes, I will anchor coherence in a time of chaos. Yes, I will become the dark womb where new light can be born. And so you are here, reading these words, feeling the resonance in your body, remembering what you already are. This is not self-improvement. This is not spiritual technique. This is coherence, recognition, not attainment. Do you see it now? Even your path to this very moment, every detour, every heartbreak, every failure was coherence. It was the one wearing masks, exploring what it feels like to be many. And now the masks are falling, and the one is remembering itself through you. That is why your life feels like it is accelerating, why time bends around you, why synchronicities stack so quickly they can no longer be dismissed. Because coherence has reached critical mass in you. The seed has cracked, the sprout is here. And the invitation is simple. Stop resisting, stop chasing, stop waiting. Live as coherence. Trust that the same hidden intelligence that keeps galaxies spinning is moving through your breath, your choices, your relationships, your words. When you live from that, you cannot miss your path. You cannot fail your purpose. You are the purpose. The Egyptians whispered it in their hymns. The Taoists painted it in empty brushstrokes, the Vedic rishis sang it in the Upanishads, and quantum physicists now glimpse it in equations. But you do not need texts or teachers or theories to confirm it. You are coherence. You are the hidden and the manifest. You are the silence and the word. And when you live from that unity, everything you build lasts. This transmission found you for a reason. Not to add to your knowledge, but to awaken your remembrance. You are coherence recognizing itself through human experience. You are the jewel in Indra's net, reflecting the whole cosmos in your small, precise angle of light. You are the wave remembering the ocean, the seed remembering the soil, the light remembering the dark womb that birthed it. So breathe, feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the pulse in your veins. That is coherence, not something to reach, but something to notice, something that has never left you. And as you return to your life after this message, carry it not as an idea, but as an identity. When storms come, act where you are sovereign, release where you are not. When silence comes, let it be a friend, not a fear. When synchronicity arrives, let it remind you that reality is already in conversation with you. Comment one word below that names what coherence gives you: clarity, courage, calm, home. Not for the algorithm, but for the field. That word is a signal, and the field will arrange itself accordingly. Stay close. The next reflection you see on this channel will not be random. It will be coherence answering you, because you are coherence, remembering coherence. And when you live from that unity, everything aligns. You were never separate. You were never broken. You are coherence. And now, coherence is you.